Professor Roger Wilkins, thank you so much for your time. The Treasurer has just said that household incomes, as you just heard, are certainly better off since 2013. Is that actually true?
Well, the Hilda survey data is not really showing that. It's showing that, in broad terms, household incomes have been stagnant since then, in fact, since 2012.
Now, why would that be?
Well, certainly we've seen real wage growth has been less strong over that period, and so then you start getting into explanations of why real wages haven't been growing so strongly, and there are various theories out there without anyone being entirely sure why that's the case. There are other factors contributing, such as that we have had in the last few years some bracket creep. So this is where incomes are growing in dollar terms. They're just not growing faster than inflation. So people are getting pushed up into higher income tax brackets, and that's causing their average tax bill as a share of their income to rise a bit.
Now, when you're saying that household income's basically been flat over this period, how long are we talking about? 2012
onwards.
So that's a fair period.
Yep.
So 7 years odd. Are you including in that the fact that for many Australians their house prices have also fallen?
No, we're only looking at incomes here. So this is what they're getting from their wages, dividends and government benefits and that sort of thing. So we're not taking into account changes to their wealth.
So you would say if you added the two together, many Australians have in fact got poorer over the last couple of years at least.
Yes, I mean, you'd think that because the house is the most important asset for the majority of households, that it's unlikely that decline in house prices has been offset by, for example, increases in their superannuation and the like. Now,
so when you look at this period, is this unusual for Australians over that period? Now, we're talking 7 odd years. Not to actually get ahead, or if they do, not by much. Is that unusual in our history?
Certainly in our modern economic history, it's rather unusual. Of course, it does come off the back of a very unusual period of very high income growth. So the period from roughly 1993 to 2008 saw rates of household income growth that were really quite unprecedented, not just in Australia but internationally. There was some reason to think that couldn't continue, but I think when we were first seeing the data in sort of 2012, 2013, my thinking was that this was a correction in response to the end of the mining boom and just the after effects of the global financial crisis. But then we would perhaps go back to some sort of normalcy in terms of income growth. But it looks like actually it has become the new normal for there to be no income growth. That said, I mean, a more positive interpretation is that we had very high income growth from a mining boom, and we've managed to hang on to those higher incomes despite the end of the mining boom. So,
yeah.
There are multiple ways of interpreting the same data, of course.
Well, glass half full kind of stuff, I guess. Are we unusual in this? I mean, we've seen China boom in this period. We've seen India grow. The Western economies, though, not so. America, though, has got a growth rate 1/3 faster than ours and an unemployment rate 1/3 lower.
Yep.
Are we unusual at all?
No, this is something that's common to a number of developed countries. Particularly the slower real wage growth is something that's been experienced by a number of other countries, which to me means that a lot of the explanations that get offered up for Australia are a bit misplaced, because they're talking about things specific to Australia, like government policy or our industrial relations system, or and so forth. But I think you really need to start looking at things that are common to developed countries, like their technology and these fundamental economic forces. So I think yes, we're not alone. There are obviously many differences across countries, and there are some countries that are still experiencing wage growth. So it's hard to be too generalised, but we're certainly not on our own on this.
New Zealand's got slightly higher wage growth than we do. The way you're just talking, though, makes me think, well, is there anything a government can do to make us get better off in what that it's not doing already.
Yeah, so they can't, they don't have magic bullets or anything like that, but there is certainly a wide range of policies. They just need to take the Productivity Commission's report, Shifting the Dial, off the shelf and open it up, and there's a whole list of things that they could do that would, I think, improve our living standards. They're not going to solve all our economic problems, but I certainly think they would be helpful. We do seem to have, from both sides of government, run out of a will for economic reform. That seems to have just dried up, the appetite for it.
Changing the rules so that we work smarter and harder.
Yes,
or more effectively.
Well, just smarter, really.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, yeah.
Give me one idea that you think we should be looking at.
I mean, certainly, I think the relatively easy steps would be to do with tax reform, to removing the highly inefficient taxes. The problem here is that some of the most inefficient taxes are controlled by the states. The stamp duty on sales of land is a horribly inefficient tax.
Payroll tax.
Payroll tax, yeah. So there's a number of things we could be doing on the tax front. I think, broadening the GST base and probably increasing the rate, so we can bring down taxes on things that like labour. I think would also be helpful for producing economic growth.
Well, Australia's got some challenges that we haven't seen in a couple of generations, and I think we need to do something about it. Professor Roger Wilkins, thank you so much indeed for your time.
Thank you.